Buenos días a todos y gracias por vuestra asistencia. Como habéis oído, Sabela me pidió que presentara la charla que iba a dar hoy Xavi sobre el Día Internacional de la Luz, y aprovechando esa petición me he tomado la libertad de hacer una pequeña introducción histórica, por un lado, pero también con el fin de aclarar o definir conceptos que veréis durante la presentación y que a veces parecerán chocantes. El título de esta charla viene motivado porque, para quienes no lo sepan, el 16 de mayo, como anunciaban también en la carátula de la charla en su momento, fue instaurado por la UNESCO como el Día Internacional de la Luz, día en el que se intenta mostrar el papel preponderante que juega la luz en nuestras vidas y sobre todo en nuestro devenir diario. Ejemplos: la fotosíntesis, las pinturas de Goya, las plataformas de televisión por cable o la tomografía computerizada. Algunos ejemplos que creo que todos conocéis bastante bien. ¿Por qué el Día Internacional de la Luz? El Día Internacional o Mundial de la Luz arranca en el año 2015, año que fue declarado Año Internacional de la Luz, con el fin de que ese día viera la gente el potencial que tenía la luz. La fecha elegida no fue casual. El 16 de mayo de 1960, el físico e ingeniero Theodor Maiman realizó el primer experimento con éxito de una emisión coherente con un láser de rubí. Este hecho, unido al desarrollo de las fibras ópticas como portadores de luz que habían sido desarrolladas a lo largo de los años, bueno, comenzaron en el 52, pero a lo largo de la década del 50 del siglo pasado, y siguiendo la propuesta de Stewart Miller de los laboratorios Bell, que en 1969 presentaba un trabajo que pretendía desarrollar circuitos integrados en los que los fotones y no los electrones se usaran como portadores. Todos estos avances, como decía, en su conjunto dieron lugar a los primeros trabajos sobre tecnología óptica integrada. Más tarde, esta tecnología pasó a denominarse fotónica, ampliando de esta manera el concepto que excede de la óptica convencional o geométrica a la interacción de la radiación con el medio. Hoy día se define ya la fotónica como ciencia del aprovechamiento de la luz. Esta definición es debida al físico francés Pierre Agrand, que aumenta o continúa la definición diciendo que la fotónica abarca la generación, detección, manejo de la luz a través de las guías, manipulación y amplificación. Y lo más importante, su utilización en beneficio de la sociedad. Esta definición, que si bien fue realizada en 1967, no fue publicada hasta 1973, es la primera publicación que hace mención del término fotónica. Sin embargo, hasta la década de los años 90, no del siglo pasado, me refiero, no comienza la fotónica a ser considerada una tecnología suficientemente horizontal y complementaria de la electrónica, y comienza realmente el desarrollo que hoy día ha llevado a la definición ya de circuitos fotónicos similares por su complejidad a lo que eran los primeros circuitos fotónicos denominados LSI en la tecnología microelectrónica. Hoy día la fotónica es una tecnología horizontal, como he comentado, y que incide en una gran variedad de campos y áreas científico-tecnológicas. Xavi os va a mostrar a continuación cómo, a veces queriendo y a veces sin querer, utilizamos la tecnología fotónica incluso en algunos de los trabajos de investigación que se realizan en el Instituto de Microelectrónica de Barcelona. Unos con el objetivo de continuar el desarrollo de esta tecnología y otros con el objetivo de usarla como herramienta para diferentes objetivos de la investigación. Ya he abusado bastante de vuestro tiempo y creo que es el momento de que Xavi arranque con la presentación, que es de lo más interesante. Gracias a todos. Xavi.
Sí, gracias, Carlos. Voy a compartir pantalla y pongo la presentación. Okay. Thank you, Carlos, for this kind introduction and yeah, this International Day of Light. my objective in this presentation was to bring to you, to show you all things related to optics and photonics that we are doing in the institute from the very beginning up to the research that we are doing right now in different groups. The first thing that I did was to check our webpage, and most of you will know it's very curious that any of the groups has any reference to photonics or optics. And when you go deeper and check what the groups are doing and the description of the groups, in very few of them, the words photonics, optics, or similar are appearing. But when you check the publications of last 5-10 years in our institute, many of the researchers are involved in some way in optics and photonics. And it seems quite a strange or bizarre situation, no? Then give me the opportunity, let me bring the light into the darkness, as Carlos Porta says every Monday in TV3. For this, I will start from the beginning. And if one name in the Institute stands out above the others, is the name of Carlos Dominguez. I describe Carlos Dominguez as a life dedicated to silicon photonics. Carlos is member of most of optics photonics societies in Spain and also international, and he's the TESIC representative in EPIC, the European Photonic Industry Consortium, also in the technological platform Photonics 21, and also in EPIC's FAB, the European Silicon Photonic Alliance. Then it's not surprising that the first publication in the Institute devoted to photonics is a publication of Carlos Dominguez. It was in 1995, and it was the first structure, the first waveguide based on an arrow structure. After this year, some publications appear, and it was in 1997 when the first photosensor was integrated in silicon technology. This image is showing this photosensor. Oh, I can't hear myself. Okay, now. Here you can see a diode, a photodiode, and an optical waveguide. And after that, in 1998, it was the first time that Planar micro-optics were integrated in silico for sensing. It was the first optochemical sensor developed in our institute. And in 1999, it was the first time that the concept integrated optics appeared in one publication, a publication in quite a strange journal called Vacuum. And it's not strange that all these publications were one of the most cited in photonics in our institute. After that, there was a very big development in photonic components. There were these arrow optodes, then also the Mach-Zehnder interferometers, accelerometers, grating couplers, many devices and components, photonic components were developed. And I removed the word first time, because it was the first time that all of these components were published in CNM, but also most of them at global level. Most of them, it was the first time that this kind of Mach-Zehnder was integrated in silicon photonics, and also the first time that an optofluidic device was completely compatible with the CMOS technology. And here in 2009, it was the first silicon LED, silicon-based LED. You can see in this image the emission, and this was implemented in the first transceiver based on silicon photonics that we did in 2016. This transceiver integrates the LED, an optical waveguide, and also a photodiode for the detection. Then it was the first time that a full integrated circuit it was developed in CMOS compatible technologies. And after that, there is this publication in the Journal of Sensors, where our technology that was very stable was implemented as a platform of silicon nitride. Here you can see how our institute is compared with other silicon-based technologies internationally, compared with IMEC, compared with Leti, compared with Lionics. And here there is a very nice description of this platform. You can also find it in this Silicon Photonic Foundry report from VLC Photonics, that is a company in Valencia. And thanks to that, our technological platform in photonics is now available for users that want to produce photonic integrated circuits and can use us as a foundry. We are working as a photonic foundry. And here I would like to put a description, because these users can use us as, we can also provide these multi-wafer platforms, as it was very common in microelectronics. Then now provide photonics in the level that others like fabs or others provide in microelectronics. And everything is very well detailed in these two papers that I put here, where all these members that before I show you, IMEC, LETI, and also CNM, explain their technologies and how they can help to users that want to use them. But all photonics and electronics in the institute is not made in our group, but there are many other groups that are working directly or indirectly in photonics and optics. This is, for example, the case of Micro Nanotools group, that he was very clever, realizing that cells and tissues are quite transparent to visible light. And then they produce, for example, in this very nice paper, a photovoltaic cell that is photosensitive, and with this they can stimulate the cells and produce an increase in the intracellular calcium. In the paper, I really recommend it. You can see an image of some cells, as I don't know if you can see my arrow, but here you have a cell, and here you have all of these photovoltaic microcell arrays that are stimulating them and are producing that these cells are acting in a different way. In this case, as I said, they are increasing the intercellular calcium as a result of the photostimulation. Also, a very nice result of this group is this silicon chip that has a flexible membrane and that is measuring the pressure. The performance of the system is very simple. When the membrane is deflected, there is an interferometric process, a Fabry-Perot, and it is changing the color of the device. And why it is that clever? Because they introduce this kind of sensors inside cells, and they can monitor just using light as a transduction element. Okay, then depending on the color of this chip that is inside the cell, they can know what is the inner pressure inside it. And it is the first time that it has been reported that a device can be implemented and measured inside the cell. I also really recommend to check this paper. Another group that is very involved in optics and photonics is the ICAS group. They are developing imagers, digital imagers for different applications. Particularly, they have been working many years in the infrared range, but they also have some publications and some devices that can work in the visible range. And something curious about this group is that they had a project called Canario, where they were detecting gases with these infrared imagers. And the name was in relation to these canarios that were inside the mines, you remember, and were used to detect toxic gases inside this. Another group that is working a lot with imagers is the Power Devices and Systems group. They are maybe one of the main experts on thermal characterization, not only in Spain, but in Europe. And they are very experts in infrared thermography. They have setups that are capable to measure the temperature of your chips with high precision and also with high resolution. With these setups, you can follow the performance of our chips, but also they are very specialized on looking for the failure point, because they can measure very well these hotspots that you will have. Here I put an example of a microwave integrated circuit, which is quite new. And maybe you can ask them, because I have found very strange chips with a very strange morphology, but probably Xavi Jordà can explain better than me what is this. Another group that is also involved in photonics and optics is the biomedical applications group. They have been working on that some time, and they have experience in the development of nano-optomechanical sensors like this one. You can see in the image, you have a device, and when the pressure inside the device is changing, it is changing of color. In a very simple way, you can determine the concentration, well, the pressure inside the system. And they are also working with nanoplasmonic structures for the detection of bacteria that Mar Alvarez can explain you very well. And another application very interesting is this kind of devices that they develop. This is a self-powered electrochromic sensor. And in your right, you have the architecture of the sensor. In the left, you can see more or less how it is working. You can see that there is like a display that is colored, is blue, but it is changing from white to blue depending on the concentration of glucose that you have, and it's very simple for the end users. Check this paper because the approach is very clever, working with different resistors for adapting the signal to the concentration of glucose. And in our group, apart from all silicon photonics technologies that Carlos, Joaquin, Jad, Alfredo, and many others are working with, in the group, we are also developing other kind of devices based on non-silicon. This is polymeric structures where we can also integrate light sources, we can integrate air mirrors, we can integrate lenses, polymeric micro lenses for the detection of many components. This is something that Andreu Llobera started many years ago, and Cesar, Tony, and myself, we continue it up to now. And these are some examples of the devices that we are producing. In the first one on the left, you can see we have an optofluidic structure where with a mixer, it's a Tesla mixer that is very efficient. And then we have the optical transduction, and with this we can detect many types of biomarkers. We have done it for the detection of glucose, lactate, ethanol, many others. The second one is we call a twin reactor because it has two detection areas. In the first one, we can growth bacteria and we can interrogate them with optical fibers. We have orthogonal optical fibers, which means that we can measure, for example, scattering, we can measure fluorescence, and we can measure absorbance at the same time. But cells are retained in this small cell, and then only the supernatant is moving to the second chamber where we can detect, for example, the concentration of proteins in general at 280 nanometers or DNA without interfering the cell growing. In this third one, this is a very complex approach. Here we have a stair and cells are growing, and the objective of this device was to couple directly the light inside the cells in a way that the cells were working as a waveguide. This is a concept that we coined many years ago and that we call living photonics. It's a very complex concept, but in this case, the interaction between the light and the cells is very high and is providing us what we call fingerprint of these cells, and we can identify if they are healthy or not. Apart from that, we are developing other advanced optofluidic structures. For example, in the left, you can see it's a very simple plug-and-place system to implement disposable chips that then you can remove while you are maintaining, for example, the light source and the detector. With this, the optical fibers integrated in the chip are directly aligned, and you don't need any device for the alignment. Normally, very complex and expensive. In the second one, it's an example of optofluidic router. We call like this. It's in the case that you want to measure many analytes at the same time, or you want to interrogate different parts of the chip. We have a way to just guide the light to these different optical regions, just playing with the difference between the reflective index of the liquid and the air. Then, in a very simple way, we can monitor things that are happening in 4 independent cells using a single light source and a single detector. And here you can see a very nice approach for managing the liquid. This is a photoactuable valve. It's a wax valve, and as you can see, when you apply light, it is opening a very small channel that you can close afterwards. But that's not all. We are also collaborating with other groups of the Institute, just putting together all of our knowledge. For example, in this approach, this is a collaboration with the Micro and Nanotools group. This is another approach of measurement. We call this myospectroscopy because this system can measure at the same time the response, the optical properties of a tissue while it is measuring the mechanical loads of this tissue. And for this, we have an optical fiber. We have many eye mirrors that are guiding the light to this element here that is a micro cantilever that is working as an optical waveguide, and that is deflecting by the action of the mechanical load. And when it is deflecting, it is misaligning respect to this optical waveguide that is collecting the light. If we put at this position at the end of this waveguide, if we put an biological tissue, for example, this is an artery. Here you have the vein. We put the artery here inside. The movement, as you will see in the video, the movement of this artery is moving the cantilever that is misaligning, and we can record in real time how this cantilever is moving, and at the same time how the artery is dilating and contracting. But we can part of the light is interacting with the tissue, and we can measure, for example, the oxygen state. We can measure the presence of lipids, or also if how much water it has inside. In another collaboration with the MESI group, we developed and we implemented in the water network of Aigües de Barcelona a device for the monitoring of biofilms. Biofilms is the way that bacteria have to colonize surfaces. We have biofilms in our feet, we have biofilms in our guts, we have biofilms in our lungs, sometimes when we are ill. And we have biofilms in all the distribution network, the water distribution network that we have in our houses. And that's something that the water companies want to control, and we help them and they help us because they allow us to check the biofilm formation during almost 2 years, and we saw that we could monitor it very well. Also, we collaborate with the ICES group in the development of optoelectronic systems that can measure without the interference of environmental light. If we want to measure during long time periods, light is coming, light is going down, and you have many changes of light. Then we develop a system that is correcting all of this and is allowing us to monitor for long times, independently if it is during the day, during the night, or you are turning up or turning down the light in the room. Also, we collaborate with the biomedical applications groups in the development of a nanoplasmonic paper that can measure any biological component. This is very interesting in the case that you want to have very clean surfaces, because you can monitor the sterility in a very cheap and very simple way that is based on the change of color of this system. And we are also collaborating now with some former students of the radiation detectors group, and we developed an optoelectronic system that can measure the dose that the patients of radiotherapy are receiving and can do it in real time. And as you can see, there is no group in CNM that is not involved in optics or photonics. Then the health of this research line is now in a very good shape. We have a lot of groups doing very nice things in optics and photonics, very nice, high quality research, and we have very recognized researchers in this field, apart from Carlos, obviously. And I hope that, and I would like to welcome you to the age of the light, because I think that the future is going to this. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Xavi. I think it was a very good illustration about the big picture in photonics in the center. So now we open the seminar for the discussion. So if any of the mentioned researchers wants to say something, now is the moment. Okay, there's some people are congratulating you in the chat. And yes, I think it was very good to get to know like that every group in the center is involved in photonics and optics. It was really
I wanted to say something, Isabella.
Yes, go ahead, Cecilia.
Do you hear me? Okay, well, thank you, Xavi. It was very nice presentation. And maybe looking to that, maybe we have to open a new line in the center called photonics, something like that. Because if everybody is working on that, then we have to update our research lines. It's just a proposition, a suggestion. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Cecilia. And I think that you are also very involved in photonics recent years. And yes, of course, I think that we should give photonics some visibility. Not for us, because I think that all of us know that in the Institute we are doing a lot in related to optics and photonics, but to the people from outside that they don't know everything that we are doing. And for them, it's quite difficult to find all of this. Please, which part of the electromagnetic spectrum does photonics claim as light? Well, light, visible light from 380 to 800 should be the most common word, or the most common range for light. But in fact, UV light is also light, no? And infrared light is also light. In some Carlos, yeah, you can explain better than me.
Yes, there are a difference between light, as we know, light is the visible region of the spectra, of the electromagnetic spectra, but what we call photonics, it's ranging from UV up to X-ray. It's the whole electromagnetic spectra can be used when you work with photonics, not only with light, because light is a term that comes as a social term, not as a scientific or technical term.
Okay. And now there's a
Frances wants to say something, no?
Yes.
Yeah, Frances, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I had the hand raised, but probably you don't see it. Okay.
Okay, I see it now.
Okay, it's okay, Xavi. Thank you very much for this very nice presentation, and I also would like to acknowledge Carlos for all his work on this in this center about photonics, which is, as you said, is very well known. And I remember when I was at the university, also working with him with his arrow waveguides, and also that Xavi developed this microscope to visualize the modes in the arrows, and this was it was the last century actually. So that's very good. So my question, Xavi, was about plasmonics. I mean, do you think that plasmonics is also a part of photonics or not, or because there are also a lot of works here in the institute on plasmonics?
You're right, Frances. Yes, absolutely. It is part of photonics for sure, and I missed this part probably. I just put one reference, but it was mine. This nanoplasmonic platform on paper, but yeah, I probably missed many of the works regarding to plasmonics.
Yeah. Okay, and then also the second thing also is when you talk a lot about light, also it's about the synchrotron, and there have been also a lot of collaborations between this institute and ALBA, which are very close to here, and probably in the future there will be more. So I think that this is something to highlight.
Yeah, you are right. Absolutely.
But just these are just positive comments, just to
Of course.
to bring more light into the
darkness.
into the topic. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Xavi.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Francesc. There's another question from Luis. How are we doing as a silicon photonics foundry?
I think Carlos can explain better than me this part.
Well, I tried to answer to Luis directly by the chat, but what we do as a silicon photonics foundry is we have established a standard and robust technology that can be used as a multi-project wafer approach by different research institutes, companies, and so on to develop its own prototypes, or having in mind that we also have the capabilities to do the design of these circuits or these components. So together with VLC, we have developed a process design kit that is running with ANSYS and that can be used before the fabrication to define the functionality of the chips, the approach of the technology, and can be then tested after the fabrication, validating the processes and the fabrication step.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. And now Luis is writing. Thanks you again. So it's 1:05, so we can still go on, but if anybody wants to ask a question now it's the moment. If there aren't any, we will be closing the session. Some people are writing. I don't know if there is, and if the people mentioned during the talk today, if they want to say something.
Tabela, they want you to sing.
Music, yes, that would be a good idea, Eli. Okay, Ferran says, Xavi, could you explain a bit more about the cantilever system you showed?
Sure. How can I do that? Because I have, let me check if I have here presentation. I have here one that is called Opus 2017. Probably it was there. Let me check if I have more information.
Okay.
Because with other. Okay. Let me see if it is. I'm sharing the screen.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can see.
It's good. Now, okay. Again, the video and the noise. Sorry. Okay. What we have is a system that integrates two optical fibers. here there is the optical fiber that is going to the light source, and this one is going to the detector. It is fabricated into layers, okay, in PDMS. And here we integrate these air mirrors that are guiding the light from the light source to this element here, that is the waveguide cantilever. Then here we have a space for implementing biological tissue. In this case, it was optimized for implementing here an artery. Then when the artery is here inside, it is deflecting, okay? And this deflection and this movement is misaligning the cantilever that has light inside and is guiding the light in that direction, is misaligning it with the collector, okay, with the detector. And what is happening is what you can see here. When there is a contraction, for example, of the artery, the intensity of the light is going down. And when there is a relaxation, the intensity of the light is going up. But what is interesting is that since part of the light is interacting with the tissue, you have an absorbance spectra like this one. Here you can see more or less, it's not a very high quality, but here you have 2 peaks, okay? This corresponds to the hemoglobin peaks. With these peaks, you can determine the oxygenation of your tissue. Or, for example, in the case of cardiac tissue or muscles, you can know if there is more or less vascularization. And this shape here, this is some Mie scattering. This Mie scattering is informing you about the chemical composition of the tissue in terms of, for example, presence of lipids, or if it is more muscle-like, okay? And as you will see here, we have been applying it to other things, very interesting things. For example, the monitoring of the growing of a plant. And we could monitor the growing of a plant for long times. And also, for example, in this kind of tissues, spheroids. Spheroids are structures, three-dimensional aggregations of tumor cells that also have to apply some mechanical loads to be able to then colonize other tissues. And with this, we could also monitor these mechanical loads from these spheroids. I don't know, Farhan, if I was explaining it well. Yeah, the tissue, I didn't want to show you one image because Farhan Vera is always telling me that I cannot show these images with living animals that we are monitoring. But we are not only measuring in tissues alive, but in animals alive. And we can monitor how the animal is performing, okay? If it has problems in the vasculature and all of this. And we did with animals that are healthy and with models of animals that are sick. And with this, we can have very nice information about the mechanisms that are making us becoming obese, for example, or to have cardiac problems or cardiovascular problems as well.
Okay, very interesting. And yes, as Carlos says, better not to show these pictures. I don't know if there's any other question. As it is 1:10, we can finish the session now. Anything you want to add, Xavi?
No, just thank you to everyone for being here and for the questions and for everything.
Exactly. Thank you everyone for attending the session. I think we learned a lot, and that would be it for today.